So annoyingly, I just recorded this video. It was 30 minutes long, and 6 minutes in, my lapel microphone, which I will show you, my Bluetooth lapel microphone, which is fucking rubbish, decided it did not want to work anymore. So it crashed on me, and 6 minutes into the video, the audio cut out, which meant that 24 minutes of the video, because the video was another 30-minute video, was absolutely fucking useless. So here I am, at 3:05 in the morning, re-recording this video, because if I don't do it now, I'm not going to do it again, so I might as well spend the next hour and record the video again. I'm having trouble because my phone is landscape on my tripod, but I'm using the front-facing camera, so if it looks like I'm not looking at the camera, I'm looking at the screen, not at the camera, because it's really hard to focus on a tiny little dot that's in the corner. So it does look weird, I know, I get it, but it's hard to focus on just the lens all the time, so I'm just looking at the camera. It'd be easier if there was like a camera on the top, but there's not. So what I wanted to do is just do a part 2 to the 80s movies that I think slap. The first one was sci-fi. I did put up on the community tab if anybody would want to see, well, I put up on the video if anyone would want to see a part 2. Just comment below, let me know, and I would do a part 2. I also put up on the community tab what you guys would like to see me do. More movie recommendations or more physical media stuff. The reason I put that up is because I don't buy a lot of new stuff, because it's usually way too far out of my price range. So I can't really do reviews on like the new releases, but I can do stuff on the stuff that's already in my collection. But the good thing about putting that up was that it seemed that a lot of people just liked both. They liked the movie recommendations and the physical media side. So if I can incorporate both into one video, I think I'll be onto a winner. So yeah, I've decided to do part 2 of 80s movies that I think slap, or more technically, I'd say films that are underappreciated. Movies from the 1980s that are underappreciated. Now, I've got a lot of movies to go through to find the films that I think would be worth talking about. Like, I've changed it up a little bit since the last video I recorded. Oh, the first attempt at this video. Removing Innocent Blood, which it's a great 80s movie. This is the Warner Archives release, or the Archive Collection release from Warner Brothers. This is a region 3 Blu-ray, but I'm not going to really talk much about this because I haven't watched it in years, so I can't really remember anything about it. And the other one I'm admitting from this re-recording, which was in the previous one, was Teen Wolf 1 and 2. More specifically, Teen Wolf 2. So I didn't want to focus too much on Teen Wolf because it's Teen Wolf. We all fucking love Teen Wolf. So I wanted to focus more on Teen Wolf 2. But I enjoy it a lot. But it's quite an unremarkable movie. And when I recorded it previously, I seemed to just focus on the fact that Oingo Boingo was on the soundtrack. And that seemed to be the focal point of that sort of tiny little segment. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to try and keep this to maybe 25 minutes. I'm going to try and fly through these as fast as I can, but you know me, I ramble, I go on, I talk. So first off, of the 80s movies that slap is I love animated movies. I've got a lot of them. I've got all the Disney films up the top, on the top shelf here. I say sort of like 75% or 90% of the Disney movies. But there was this weird influx of sort of like anti-Disney animated movies back in the early 80s. So we had things like American Pop, and you had the spillover from the 70s with stuff like Lord of the Rings and like Fritz the Cat and Coonskin and these sort of bizarre non-Disney 2D animated movies. Again, the 80s, they gave us loads of great ones like the Little Nemo and Flight of the Dragons, and what else is there? Just a whole host of these sort of non-Disney animated movies. Don Bluth was a very good example of the same sort of style as Disney, but in a weird and much darker tone, I guess. So you can take a look at something like The Secret of Nim, which could only be made by an independent animator, just so happened to be an animator who worked for Disney for very, very many years prior to leaving to set up his own company, which would be Don Bluth. He created the Don Bluth Company, and they made things like The Secret of Nim and American Tail. But Don Bluth first came out with like video games, so it was like Dragon's Lair and stuff. But one of the directors from the 80s and the 70s who kind of was like the outside, was like the Tarantino of animation in the 70s and 80s, where I was like, not Tarantino now, I'm talking Tarantino like Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction, Jackie Brown Tarantino. It would be Ralph Bakshi. Ralph Bakshi is a well-known animator and cartoonist. He is responsible for directing stuff like Coonskin and like attempting to adapt Lord of the Rings into an animated feature in the 70s. I think he did the Lord of the Ring, the Fellowship of the Ring, the Two Towers, and maybe half of Return of the King. I'm not 100% sure. But he also did things like Wizards with Mark Hamill, which is a great post-apocalyptic science fiction animated movie. And he directed one live-action movie, which was Cool World, in 1992, which starred Brad Pitt and Gabriel Byrne. He also directed this. This is a straight-up fantasy animated rotoscoped action drama called Fire and Ice. This is the German Blu-ray. This is the UK Optimum DVD. This is an upgrade, obviously, of this because this is DVD, but the DVD still looks fantastic. The reason I upgraded to the Blu-ray is picture quality. It would have been nicer if that artwork was on that disc, but that artwork is still pretty damn cool. The artwork is based on the man who did like the poster artwork for Conan the Barbarian, and he did the poster art for Clint Eastwood's The Gauntlet. His name was Frank Frazetta. He was a fantastic fantastic artist. Mostly does like the fantasy stuff, but he did like the Conan artwork that you'd see like with the massive muscular Conan holding the sword, standing there all puffed up and stuff. And this Fire and Ice basically takes his style of fantasy artwork and puts it into an animated form. This is a very cool film. I love this movie. This is the reason why I own it on two different versions. I remember seeing it as a kid on VHS from a video shop, and then as an adult I picked up the Optimum release because I was just like, I gotta watch it again. I remember it so... It's like I wasn't sure if I remembered it vividly or if there were scenes in it that I did remember. But yeah, Fire and Ice is a very, very cool film. Again, this is the German Blu-ray. This is it's released by Cape Light. I think they've started releasing stuff in the UK. But this is good. This is really good. It's got a remaster of 1080p HD. It's got surround sound, HD. It's got DTS sound on it, and digitally remastered, featuring a 5.1 surround and new extras. So there we go. That's a really good animated fantasy movie from the 80s. Came out around the same time as things like Heavy Metal and Star Chaser, The Legend of Orin, and there was another one as well, Rock and Rule. Again, another great sort of really hard to find animated film. I've got it on DVD. I bought it when it first came out in the UK a couple of years back now. It must be about 10 years, but I think it's way out of print. But Rock and Roll's a very cool movie. This film is a film that I took a complete punt on. I think I've talked about it before in a video. This is where I, when I was working for Blockbuster Video, we had a catalogue which we were able to do special orders for. So if a customer was looking to buy a movie but we didn't have it in stock, we could go through the catalogue and phone them up and say, look, I want to order this, I want to order this, and I want to order this. And they'd send them in. So I was going through the catalogue one day when I was really bored, just sat behind the counter. In fact, I think I was drawing and I thought, I'll have a look at the catalogue, see if there's anything in there that I fancy. And I saw the cover. It was a very small thumbnail of this cover and the film and the name The Quiet Earth. Never heard of it before. Bear in mind, this was what, 2005, I think it was. No, it would have been 2004 because I moved shops in 2005. It was $5.99. I was like, you know what? It sounds pretty cool. It looks pretty cool. I'll go on. It's £6. If it's shit, it's shit. If it's good, it's shit. It's good. And it turned out to be fucking amazing. It is a film from New Zealand from 1985, directed by Jeff Murphy. Jeff Murphy directed something else quite well known. Oh, yeah, he directed Free Jack, the Emilio Estevez and Mick Jagger, Anthony Hopkins sci-fi movie from the early 90s, which is a piss-poor movie, but still quite fun. You'll find that I think a lot of bad movies are bad, but I still quite enjoy them. I quite like bad movies, hence the reason my website is called Bad Movie Beatdown. But this stars Bruno Lawrence and Alison Routledge and Peter Smith, and it's The Quiet Earth. Now, if you haven't seen The Quiet Earth, do yourself a favour, fucking watch it. It's incredible. It's just so good. Basically, the first half of this film is a one-man show. Bruno Lawrence gives one of the best single performances I've ever seen a person give. It's like a one-man performance against no one. I mean, he plays a scientist called Zach Hobson who wakes up one day to find that he is the last man on Earth, or so he thinks. But for the first half of the movie, it's kind of a descent into madness. First of all, he goes around trying to find, putting up signs. Like, you remember The Last Man on Earth, the TV show with Will Forte, where he goes around putting messages on massive billboards? Well, it's kind of the same thing. He puts this message out on audio wave and puts big signs up and everything, but there's no one comes, and eventually someone does come, a woman, and but the first half is about his complete descent into isolation and madness, and just to the point where he's wearing a dress, carrying a shotgun, and he bursts into a church where he's basically going to commit suicide because he cannot live without interaction with another person. And he does eventually, he has like a sort of epiphany, and he moves out of the place where he's in, he moves to a new house, and just decides to live his life out. And then he meets this other person, this woman. And then they have this time together, and then they meet another person. And the second half of the film is more a love triangle between the three. There is Zach, there is, I can't remember her name. I can't remember Alison Routledge's character's name in the film. But Peter Smith's character is named Arpi. And he's an Aboriginal man. I think he was originally a criminal before everybody disappeared. But there's this love triangle between Bruno Lawrence's character, Zach, the woman, and Arpi. And they're also trying to find out why everyone's disappeared. It's fantastic. And the final shot is mind-blowing. You're just like, wow, that's insane. In fact, the cover is actually the giveaway of the last shot. Yes, I absolutely adore this film, and I think if you haven't seen it, you need to find it ASAP. It's from 1985. It's from New Zealand, and it's incredible. That's The Quiet Earth. Next up, we have a film starring Chuck Norris. And yeah, it's like, why would I choose Chuck Norris movie? Chuck Norris's movies are pretty much well known. You've got Braddock, Missing in Action. You've got Sidekicks. I think that was 1991 with Jonathan Brandis. Then you've got like The Octagon or A Force of One and Mission in Action 2. Delta Force, which I think I've just said. Delta Force 2. But I don't think many people really talk about this one. Even though I know this has had a Blu-ray release in the UK, I think 88 Films released it. I don't have that. I only have the older MGM DVD. But I don't think people really take a look at this film when they talk about his filmography. And I think that's quite sad, because to me, I think this is personally his best film. And it's Code of Silence, starring Chuck Norris and who else is in it? Henry Silva. I think Dennis Farina is also in this. I think he plays his partner. This is a cool movie. This is a cool sort of like action crime drama. It was made in 1985. It was released by Orion, I think it is. Yeah, it was released by Orion Pictures. It's not a... Shit. I have completely forgotten what the name of the company is. Canon. It's not a Canon film. It is a Paramount Pictures release made by Orion. The interesting thing about this film is that this film was originally pitched to Clint Eastwood as a sequel to Dirty Harry, which would be cool. And you can see shades of Dirty Harry in Code of Silence, even though it was rewritten as Code of Silence to feature a different character, played by Chuck Norris. But yeah, this was originally pitched as a sequel to Dirty Harry. Clint Eastwood turned it down because I think at the time he was shooting... there was a couple of films around the same time that he was making, so there's things like Bronco Billy and Pink Cadillac, but I think he was filming Pale Rider at the time because that came out in 1989. Or 1985, sorry. So yeah, that's a really cool fact, and an interesting fact about the fact that a possible Clint Eastwood film ended up being a Chuck Norris film, and to my knowledge, or to my mind, Chuck Norris's best film. Really cool action, really good drama. He gets to do a bit of acting, proper acting in this, as opposed to all the other stuff that he's in, where he's just quite bland. Let's face it, Chuck Norris ain't a great actor, but even though Invasion USA is like top tier 80s action. But yeah, Code of Silence is a really cool film, and I think more people should really check that out. Then we've got a very underrated movie by Ridley Scott. This one came out in 1989. It came out at a time where a lot of Asian culture and Asian influence was finding its way into Hollywood movies. There was quite a few at the time that this came out. There was, I think, The Year of the Dragon had come out. There was a few like Hong Kong movies had been released in the States. Like I think The Killer had come out, and there was like some Japanese films had been released. So like you had this like sort of influence of Asian culture into American films, where it was focused mainly on crime movies. But this one, I think, is a massively underrated Ridley Scott film. And it's Black Rain, starring Michael Douglas and Andy Garcia. Ken Takakura. Ken Takakura. Ken Takakura, who I think is the one from the Yakuza, but also has Kate Capshaw as well, who is Mrs. Spielberg. This is such an underrated movie. It's such a good film, and I think, again, like I said, I think when people think of Ridley Scott, we always think of Blade Runner and an Alien, and then like Gladiator, Kingdom of Heaven, and all these big, huge, sort of like epic movies, and these like genre-defining films like Blade Runner and like an Alien specifically, and even like something like Legend, again, as another Ridley Scott fantasy film. where he is a great filmmaker. He's a crotchety old bastard man now, but he is still a fucking fantastic filmmaker. And I think this one kind of slips under the radar when people talk about him as a filmmaker, because this film's fucking awesome. You can tell it's a Ridley Scott film, but it also feels like a Tony Scott film. So I don't know whether or not Tony gave him a hand. I don't know why he would give him a hand, but there are cinematography choices that are generally found in Tony Scott movies as opposed to Ridley Scott movies. Like, there's scenes in it that, like, if you watch Beverly Hills Cop 2, Tony Scott directed Beverly Hills Cop 2 and The Last Boy Scout. There are certain shots, specifically sunrise shots, like a sunrise or a sunset, that nobody else shot a sunset like Tony Scott did. And there's a shot right at the beginning of this where you can see the sun setting in New York, and you just immediately just think, is this a Tony Scott film, until you find out it says directed by Ridley Scott. But Black Rain is very cool. It's about two New York detectives who have to escort a violent prisoner or a violent gangster to Japan, and they find themselves caught up in a very brutal Yakuza gang war. And it's very cool. It's very, very cool. Great movie. Hugely underrated. Good music by Hans Zimmer as well. And yeah, it's just another film that I think, like, I know this is on Blu-ray. I don't have the Blu-ray, but the picture quality on this DVD is absolutely terrible. If played through a Blu-ray player, it comes up with like just a tiny box in the middle, and it doesn't even look that good through a upscale DVD player either. But yeah, Black Rain, absolutely cracking movie. One I think a lot of people don't really think about when they think of Ridley Scott, but it's one of his most underrated movies. And the last one I'm going to talk about is a film from Australia, mate. I've had a New Zealand film, so I've got to have an Australian film. This is from, I want to say 1987, but I might be wrong again. I think it might be 1985. It's directed by Brian Trenchard Smith, who directed Escape 2000. Now, if you don't know what Escape 2000 is, it's also known as Turkey Shoot. It starred Steve Railsback and Olivia, can't remember her name now, from like 1982. I think there's another one as well with something Blood Island. I can't remember. He's also directed The Man from Hong Kong, starring Sammo Hung. This is the sort of dystopian dead-end drive-in. This is available on DVD. This is the Anchor Bay Region 1 2 double feature with Ruggiero Deodato. His Cut and Run starring Richard Lynch and Lisa Blount. Is it Richard Lynch? Yeah, it is Richard Lynch. Also has Michael Berryman in it. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about Dead End Driving. Dead End Driving is very, very, very cool. You can see there's a George Miller influence on the film. At the start, it's sort of dystopian and sort of like, it's not post-apocalyptic, but you can tell it's set in a very near future that is kind of ruled over with a sort of dystopian style, like an authoritarian hand. A good example that would be very much like that is, I say, like something like Battle Royale, which has that dystopian feel to it, even though it's not blatantly dystopic. But it's about these kids who go to a drive-in theatre to watch a movie. And when they're in the movie theatre, the government decides to lock all the kids into this drive-in theatre. And it's just full of like punks and gangs and stuff like that. And this guy, the main character, then has to try and find a way to get out of this sort of teen prison. It's very cool. It's a very, very good film. And it has some cracking stunt work in it, considering that the drive-in's a very confined place. And I've got to give it to Brian Trenchard Smith. The stuff he made earlier in his career, compared to the stuff that he made in his later career, like, did he make? I think he made Leprechaun in Space or Leprechaun in the Hood, one of them. He knew how to make, like, even not just Brian Trenchard Smith, but like George Miller and who's the guy who made the other one that followed it? There was a film called Chain Reaction which starred Mel Gibson. I say starred Mel Gibson. He was only in it for like 2 seconds. Steve Bisley, the guy who plays Goose in Mad Max 1. It was in a film called Chain Reaction where they made these fucking awesome like stunt scenes for real in these cars and stuff. Like, Australians didn't give a fuck about safety. They just went straight. It was like, if we can do it in one, we'll do it in one. And they did. That's why I think a lot of Australian action films stand out better than most American action movies, because the stunt work that they were doing and have done since is exemplary compared to the CGI that you see in American movies. I mean, George Miller, even at the age of, I think he was 70, came back in 2015 and showed like Hollywood filmmakers how to make a fucking action movie with Mad Max Fury Road, which is still like up there. And I don't know what Furiosa is going to be like. I mean, it looks quite CGI-y, but Dead End Driving is a very, very cool movie, and I think it's massively underrated. I know that Arrow have released this on Blu-ray in the UK. I think Shout Factory released it in the States, or maybe Kino Lorber. I'm not sure. But it's definitely worth picking up. I'm gonna be picking up the Blu-ray of this at some point, hopefully. I don't know if it's out of print now, but I gotta keep an eye out in like CEX or something like that if I can get it secondhand. But yeah, it's a great little movie. It's a great Ozploitation flick. I mean, there's a very good documentary called I can't even remember. Once Upon a Time in Australia or something like that. Or Once Upon a Time in Oz, I think it's called, or something like that, which is a documentary about all the Ozploitation films that came out in like the late 60s through to like the early 90s. Like, another really good film that comes up quite often on when you talk about Ozploitation movies is Road Games, starring Stacey Keach and Jamie Lee Curtis. This is directed by Richard Franklin and written by Everett DeRoche, who also wrote Long Weekend, another great sort of like Ozploitation. It was like a horror movie and stuff like that. Australia has a fantastic like history of like great genre movies, and Dead End Driving sits in there perfectly. So this has now been 28 minutes. Hopefully the audio is working, because I ain't fucking recording this again. So yeah, we hit 1,000 subscribers. How cool is that? That's amazing. In fact, when I checked earlier, we were on 1,020 subscribers, which again is amazing, because I just stand here and talk bollocks for like 20 minutes, about 30 minutes. And I'm really enjoying making this content, going through these films and reviewing them, or giving you little like recommendations, and looking at the actual products and stuff. And I seem to have found the right niche, I guess, because if you look back through my channel, you'll see that most of the videos I had only had like 150, maybe 200 views and stuff, because I didn't know how to do YouTube. I was just doing videos of me doing DVD and Blu-ray updates. I wasn't hashtagging them or anything. And I'm really glad that it's sort of taken off. I've done quite a few videos so far, I think, since the sad reality of being a physical media collector, which you guys have all responded really well to. And I just want to thank you all for making me really, really happy, considering last year was a big pile of shit for me. But hopefully these videos will continue to get better. And again, come over to the community tab. I've put stuff up on there. Tell me what you want to see. Tell me if you want me to go through like movies from the 90s and recommend stuff like that. Go through I'll do a quick look at my Arrow collection, or my powerhouse collection and go through some of those movies for you. It's really hard for me to come up with topics to talk about when it comes to just physical media, because I don't review releases. So if I can give you a bit of film recommendations and a bit of film information that can help you discover more movies and cinema and stuff like that, then that's fantastic. And that's what I would really rather do than copy all the other channels and do reviews of Blu-ray releases, because I can't fucking afford it. It's too expensive. I'm going to have a mortgage by the end of the year. I'm not going to be able to do that. So I am going to call this a night. I'm going to throw up the peace sign and I'm going to say, I'm out. Thank you very much.